Well, man, I appreciate you being here. I know
Yeah.
you're a busy guy, you got a family, and this is pretty free form. As you can tell, it always started pretty free form style. And the first thing I wanted to get into is like, hey, you started with us how long ago? When I assessed you, it was what, year and a half ago? Was it right before COVID? Was it a year before COVID? When did I start with you?
I think it was in January
In
because
January.
I remember talking to Lam a lot. We were working out, and then that kind of fell off. But then I think it was kind of, I kind of had that moment where I just wanted to make some changes too, because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to play basketball. Like I kept showing up at Gregory. This is what happened. I kept showing up at Gregory, and I'd really want to play, but even shooting hoops, like just warming up, was becoming problematic. So
Hmm.
really wanted to make a change. So yeah, it
Well,
was.
how was it problematic? So like you're hooping, something was off, like a lot of things were off in your body, but what was problematic with even just shooting around?
It was really just jumping and landing, and the way it made my knees feel, and the swelling that I was experiencing too. That wasn't instantaneous, but I know, like, you do a certain movement, it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
here, tomorrow's going to be interesting. Yeah, it was really just my knees and like just not being able to move. And then of course, like thinking back, the experience of actually playing basketball over the past couple of years, it's just, I felt like an old man, like just not really quick. Felt like my feet were really slow. Felt like, I was good at kind of rooting down low and doing some pretty, like my little hook shot, but that was pretty much all I got.
Mhm. Okay, so leading up to that point in Gregory where you were just like, man, even just shooting around feels like crap. All those years, what were some things that were going on? Like, what injuries did you incur over the years? I saw all your X-rays. I want you to know, want you to tell the people, what things did you incur over time?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so it first started in high school where I had an accident and had to get my toenail removed on my big foot. Or I mean on my big toe on my right foot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I got that removed, and it was a surgical procedure. So they actually, to have a proper amount of skin to to seal up the area that they took out, they had to make the toe shorter. So my right toe is shorter than my left toe.
Wow.
And then with that too, I've always had flat feet. I've always had, some sort of low level knee problems. Um, and then just over the years, I torn a meniscus, had surgery on that, which kind of set me back. And then just really had patellofemoral syndrome at first, which evolved into arthritis, which then evolved into a moderate case of arthritis, and evolved into conversations with doctors about, future knee replacements, and all that just kind of compounded on itself, and really not moving efficiently and slowing
Dang.
down and being overweight too. Yeah.
I'm gonna bring you back to that knee replacement. So that when you heard about when you started having conversations about knee replacements, like what was your emotional state around that?
Oh man, I did not like that at all. And I mean, it's pretty ambiguous with the doctor. It wasn't like you need to get a knee replacement now, but he's like, this is in your future, just so you know. Like, this is what's, you're gonna have this. So I mean, it always just kind of looms back there. Um, yeah, but yeah, I don't like thinking about that. The surgeries I've had, I've hated them. Like,
Mm.
it's just, you feel violated when you come out of it. And the
Yeah,
surgeries I've had, I tend to lose parts. Like, I don't get stuff replaced. Like,
yeah. I mean, surgery is so invasive, right? Like they go in there, they cut you, and they start moving things around your body, and you're
yeah,
just you're basically subject to whatever they're doing to you. And then you come out of it, and you have this wound, and you have to heal from the wound plus whatever caused the injury in the first place. So I can
yeah,
imagine how like distraught you must have been, and how you were thinking about, okay, now you want to do a knee replacement. We just did like 3 or 4 different things. Now you want to do this
yeah.
next thing. So I would imagine like in between the surgeries, and this is what I was wondering, and this is what I see for a lot of athletes, in between the surgeries, were you just doing whatever you could do to mitigate the pain and go back to playing ball? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. I mean, it would be, a couple weeks of physical therapy or maybe like a month. And then it just was like, I mean, I might do some weight training, might kind of try and ease into it a little bit. But yeah, it was just as soon as I could get back out there, I was out there and probably very underprepared to be out there.
Mhm. And then you would feel like you retweaked something or re-injured something, and you feel like you had to go back to physical therapy. Mm.
Yeah. So actually, before I came to see you, and I was telling Lem this too, it just was, I mean, I was seeing a physical therapist, and it was all about the arthritis pain that I was feeling in my knees, and just trying to sort through that. And
Mm.
it was helpful, but it's also one of those things too that they were trying to treat the knee, both knees, and not really the movements that I needed to be doing to not experience the knee pain.
Mm.
So I mean, I would a perfect example would be I would do lunges with them. Like they would have me set up and do lunges, and I mean it'd be excruciating just because I didn't know how to engage my toes or line. Like I don't even know what lining stuff up felt like. Like I remember seeing there's like a big mirror, and I was doing a really extended lunge, and my right foot was back, and it looked like my ankle was rolled. Like it was so bent in half.
No.
Like that was the movement that I was doing, and probably what I was doing when I played basketball too.
Yeah.
Like nothing. I mean, they of course they do some stuff, and you feel a little bit better, but overall there was like a bigger things that I think needed to happen.
So you did physical therapy, but there wasn't enough instruction on like the internal awareness of what to feel, why things are off, how do you navigate your own body, how do you feel the right thing, how do you sense your body in space. These almost seem like, what's funny about it, man, is like I think about that and I'm like, why do they teach us this stuff in like kindergarten? Like I mean, to some degree, kindergarten, like you're a kid and things are natural to you. But as you go up the ranks in school and you get to high school, then they tell you to sit for 8 hours. And then if you play athletics, you're expected to play for like 2 hours for scrimmage and whatever you do, and maybe 1 hour of working out. And somehow you're supposed to know how to use your body, where the pitfalls are, and how to succeed athletically without injuring yourself. Like how does that math add up? Where it's like 3 hours, maybe like every other day, and then you're doing 8 hours a day of school where you're so cognitively taxed, but there's no body awareness. So, I mean, I can see the frustration with someone like you, anyone, any athlete, any person that plays a sport.
I mean, you don't even know that you're doing something wrong. Like I would go to the doctor and they'd say, "Oh, your kneecaps are misshapen," and they don't have like the typical like keel of a boat type structure that you would normally see, and you have these bone spurs. So
Like, what you talking about? My knees are misshapen. Talking about. Oh man.
Too, even rewind like 5 or 6 years, I was going to another training facility, and it was just I remember there. I guess what always seemed to be kind of missing was context and
Yeah.
like helping the mental aspect of it. Like why do I need to do like why do I need to line up my toe and keep all this stuff like you're telling me to do that, but I just don't,
Yeah.
I'm not making those connections. I'm not knowing how to stay engaged. And I just remember thinking that I would go to those training sessions and I would feel great because it was one-on-one and I'd have somebody, kind of looking at me and helping me like move a little bit more efficiently. But I mean, that was like an hour a week and that was basically all I got. Like that was the only instruction, and there's no way that I could have ever made any like real change. I would have gotten stronger and maybe that would have helped compensate, or I did get stronger, but like mechanical stuff was not getting fixed. And there was no, they would tell you things were wrong or show you that, oh yeah, you do have flat feet. Maybe you should try these orthotics or something like that. But yeah.
So it's the same concept as before, like the same, oh, they're smoky.
Oh, it's smoky.
the same concept as before. It's like the same thing they were employing to make someone an athlete is the same thing they were doing even after they're injured. It's like, well, here's an hour. Hopefully this fixes you. Good luck.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that can be frustrating. So when you came to us, and came to us after all of that back and forth and trying to figure it out, from the assessment with me, because I assessed you, now you're working with Nick, but the assessment with me, what were some big takeaways that you were just like, oh man, this is very different? What kind of lit up in your brain there?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I remember from that was just that you kind of lining me up and putting me in a better posture, and like and then you really focusing on my feet and showing me how, just with a little engagement here, a little, put your weight here, like a little arch appeared. And I had no concept that that was even possible, like just little things like that that were like pretty hopeful, and just showed me that, yeah, man, maybe if I do work at this, I can have an arch at some point, and
Mm.
maybe these bunions will start, going away on their own. And then, yeah, just going through the assessment too, and just, working through the deadlift movement and the squat movement, and just feeling a little bit better about it when I left, and just seeing, just getting a little bit of coaching there, how that could help.
Mm. So there was like a bit of hope that got instilled in that first assessment. You're like, oh, this might be possible if you got to the root cause of the problem versus
Yeah,
like go around with these symptoms. If you got to
yeah,
the root cause, maybe you could just reverse it and get it to its source. That's awesome, man. I mean, I think that is what I'm always wanting for everyone to see when they come to see us is like, look, the reason why a lot of these other approaches tend to fail is not a knock on them. It's just that they're trying to approach it from all these wonderful paths. They're good paths to take, but sometimes they're too early, they're too late, they don't have enough context, like you said. They don't build you with enough confidence from the right level that you are at currently. So they might ask you to do a lunge, and that seems so elementary. Like, why can't I do this lunge? But your body's like, this is too advanced right now.
yeah,
And so it's like, how do you make that elementary again and feel natural at the same time you're learning a whole new skill
yeah.
set, right? So that's awesome, man. So assessment, it woke you up to a few things, and then as you started training, now you've been working with Nick for a good while now.
Mhm.
Let's fast forward from that point, the assessment and having that revelation to even this past week, the intensive that you just took. So we do intensives here at the gym with certain clients we think that work hard and we want to work with. And so what changed for you in that intensive? That 1 week of just like, I'm gonna go ham. I'm looking at all my body parts and seeing how strong I can really get.
I mean, I think it's just more, it was honestly just the context I needed, because I was kind of struggling with Nick through some of the exercises and not really understanding how I should be moving. But
Yeah.
just having that, having Nick put things in the right place and let me feel what it's supposed to feel like, help me understand where like the movement is breaking down and where I'm losing connection. Yeah, that, I mean, that was kind of the big takeaway. And it's every day of that intensive week, there was something new that I was like, man, I'm feeling connections that, and I'm able to hold the connection, and I can feel the movement happening better. And, like I'm expecting pain here, but there's nothing, which was like pretty
Wow.
cool. I mean, I still, I know I'm not very advanced in the movements or doing the full movement, but I'm touching and going past, you know, ranges of motion that I have not really ever experienced. So
And what has that done for, because I think even when you started, you were still experiencing like knee pain and issues and pain around your body. Even this past week, what has that done for your pain levels in your body, your function, how strong you feel, how light you feel, how you walk?
yeah, I mean, it's been night and day, honestly. I mean, I guess I kind of want to rewind a little bit though and say
Yeah.
something before I forget. But one of the things that I've really appreciated about all the workouts is it seems like there's a constant theme of like tucking your hips, now for me, lining my feet up and like getting things in a line. But like there are certain cues that, to me, at first, like, why am I doing this? This is kind of weird. But now it's like I feel it. Like I feel when my hips tuck and I get the like I tell Nick every now and then, I'm in a position, I'm like, I feel like Isabel can just come jump on me right now. And even though I'm like on the floor with some sort of lunge position or, you know, I just feel solid and that she wouldn't be able to knock me down. Like it just that, but I think that comes from just like the same hammering in of like, okay, tuck your hips here and like, drop your lats, feel your obliques, and just like getting all those connections together and
Mm,
just being consistent with that. Like I feel like the workouts, like that's just sort of like the underlying theme of everything.
mm.
And
It's like
that,
giving you that body confidence to move in a way that's actually serving your body versus
yeah,
detracting from it. Versus like,
yeah,
you can do a workout, right? Anyone can work out, but in the instance of injuries and sports related issues, it's a shift from working out to training.
yeah,
Right? That's hard for a lot of people because they just want to work out.
yeah,
But if you play sports, you gotta make that shift. Like that, even if you don't, if you're not a professional basketball player and you're not a semi-pro or you don't play collegiate, even if you're not that, since you are doing athletic things, you have to treat yourself like an athlete. And that's hard for people to think about because they think, oh, well, I'm just doing it for fun. That's like, but you're still jumping, you're still sprinting, you're still cutting, you're still juking, you're still doing hezzies, you're still doing all sorts of stuff. And that's the exact same thing that an athlete has to go through too.
yeah,
Um, I think that's why the connection stuff becomes doubly important because ideally it should be like you don't think about it, you just go and you're in flow, you're dribbling and you're doing stuff. But unless the body can get enough cycles of good movement, like you're saying, just getting good movement in, it doesn't understand flow state yet. But
yeah.
you'll find your flow for sure.
Oh yeah. And kind of back to what you were asking about, feeling lighter on my feet or just yeah, for sure. I mean, I know, when I'm walking around the office, I'm like constantly, I'll turn a corner and like push off of my toe. I'm like, man, dude, that felt a little different. Like, didn't
Just
feel like I was
like
plodding
juking out
along.
random coworkers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. So I mean that part feels really good. I know I was telling you and Nick about playing one-on-one, and I know that like the stamina is not there, but I was playing against some pretty young bucks, and I definitely was able to stay in front of them. So, and that's not typical for me, really, especially the past couple of years. Um,
You were able to get in a position like in defense, like able to get to your
oh
spot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like I dropped into the defensive stance. I haven't played basketball, obviously with COVID for a year, but a couple of weeks ago, yeah, playing with that kid, and I remember getting into the defensive stance, and I'm like, whoa, like, my groin isn't keeping my knees together right now. Like I'm able to actually get wider. And because I'm wider, I can actually, sort of move and shift my weight a lot quicker. And he
Awesome.
basically couldn't get around me until I got really tired.
That's right. That's right. So
Which is cool. Yeah.
you were like Kevin Garnett slapping the floor. Like, oh, you
Yeah,
could
and they're
get
like, oh God, that slapping the floor got me even more tired.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's so cool to hear that you got this like different feeling in your body. Like, well, I would imagine taking that feeling and thinking about, well, what if I had this feeling in high school? What if I had this feeling in college? What if I had this feeling? Like, I wonder what that would do for your psyche, like having that feeling from then all the way through now. I bet it'd be like probably life changing.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I was a pretty good baseball player, but would always get hurt and I've always had issues with my knees. And I
Yeah.
do think back, like, the stuff y'all have shown me, the stuff that, even that I learned from other trainers, like, man, if I just had a kernel of this knowledge when I was in high school, like, I think I would have been a much better athlete. I was always a really good athlete and somehow like could compensate for the shortfalls that I had, but just getting through the knee pain that I experienced, yeah, I mean, it would have been amazing.
What would you say, like, with, because I always wonder with people that we train as we get into the unstoppable baller more and more, and we start taking in more basketball athletes, is when it comes to knee pain, that's like a classic basketball issue, like knee pain. You've gone through a decent amount of time of training. So what have you realized is the one of the most important things to work on with people with knee pain? Like what were you like, oh man, like if I just started from this foundational piece, it would have changed the game. What did you realize?
I mean, I think for me personally and where I'm at, I think it was honestly just kind of unlocking my groin a little bit, but that's probably more from my body compensating for 30 years of trying to run around. And so I really had no groin flexibility, um, and I mean, a lot in other parts of my hip too. But if I was to think back, like when I was a kid, I mean, I think just, I mean, I had Osgood-Schlatter's and I had flat feet. So
Feet.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it would have just been flexibility and getting the right kind of flexibility and having, there was no like muscle smashing and like discussions about fascia or fascia, whatever. And
Nope.
yeah, I mean, it was just like, okay, do some, lift up your, grab your foot and lift it up and back, and there your quad is stretched out.
Yep.
So I mean, I think like advanced, not necessarily even advanced, but just a higher level of understanding to just get my muscles loose and ready to go.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
go ahead.
it was so much for me. Like in high school, I couldn't do squats. Like I couldn't bend my knees. Like
Yeah,
there was
fair.
nobody there to show me how to bend my knees and how like what needed to loosen up to like bend my knees effectively.
Mm.
And
So you're
then
probably, go ahead.
yeah, no, yeah,
I think you're probably seeing that your ankle, everything that's downstream from your knee and everything that's upstream from your knee impacts how well your knee feels.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's awesome. I mean, that's the key, right? Everything that's around your foot, your calf, your shin, and everything that's around your groin, your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, your hips impacts everything. And then you probably realize that your upper back and your shoulders impact everything downstream too.
yeah.
That's cool, man. I think that's where I think a lot of athletes get mixed up. They're like, oh, my knee, that means bad knee. I mean, you have to make this knee better. And they forget everything that's up and down from that knee that impacts it. And they get so neurotic and myopic on that one little thing. And then it doesn't change.
Yeah, and I've definitely experienced that too, just with training. And it's always about, oh man, your hips are so tight, your knee. I remember a trainer telling me that my movements were knee dominated, and I was like, well, I don't
Exactly.
know how that's possible, but yeah, what does that mean? And yeah, yeah,
Yeah. What's funny too is like you look at the defensive stance, it's like it's basically what you were doing in the day. You were in pancake doing like a hinge. That's defense. Like your legs are wide, your knees are open. That's getting in a good defensive. Or when you're about to cross over, you look at Kevin Durant, right? Like he crosses over so high. Like yes, he's a tall dude, but also like he's very stiff. So he crosses over like super high. And he's
yeah,
still a talented player, but his Achilles and his knees get destroyed. And that's just the nature of his inability to get low. But then you look at someone like, I mean, Steph Curry is also low to the ground, but like people that can really get their hips wide and wide, crossover low, it changes the game because then they can number one make the defender have to get lower, but number two, the time it takes for them to get from point A to point B is less because the center of gravity is low, right? If your center of
yeah,
gravity is high, you're top heavy, and so it's like, how do you even get to the position? So all the stuff they teach in athletics, they should do in training. They should put you in the same positions and make you work, but they don't spend enough time in that shape. So like when you're in the shape of pancake for like 40 reps, it's like, oh my God, this is killing me. But technically, like you have to do that for defense, right? You got to do that for crossovers. You got to do it for all the
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Um, so like I think that's when we say 40 reps, People are like, oh my God, that sounds absurd. But it's like, well, that's like 3 minutes of being in defense.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reality. And it's like when we make you do the top down Ziza, it's like we're teaching you how to basically hezi and step back on one leg. Because like, can you use your back foot to push? Can you use that foot to explode? Can you use that foot to sprint? And if you can't do that for two 20-minute halves or two 12-minute halves or four, whatever it is, you're gonna get your butt handed to you.
Yeah.
But like, what was that like? Like for you, because I mean, I'm talking about it conceptually, but for you, like when Nick's like, "Yo, you got to do 20 reps," what was that like for you in your head?
I've gotten used to it now, but some of the initial workouts and like the smashing and the one that got me that was a real big mental hurdle was the banded toe. Like where you have your toe in the band and you're pulling back on the band, but doing 100 of those.
Yep.
And then there were the circles too. Oh my God.
That lit you up, huh?
It lit me up, and yeah, I was just like, damn, man, this is pretty tough, and I just don't know if I can get through it. Or even starting with the squeezer tool. God, I hated that thing.
For sure. So it's like,
but I'm getting over it now, and like I notice now when I pick it up, it's not as hard. And
yeah.
But the 40 reps, I mean, to me, honestly, like I kind of come back to, that thought that I told you about when I was in the other training, like how am I actually going to make a change in my body if I'm just like kind of dipping my toe in once a week?
Yep.
Yeah. So I realized that it takes that kind of work and that kind of consistency to actually make a difference. Yeah. The hard part is mixing that in with life and reality, but I know that that's what it takes, especially for, someone who has 30 years of just moving differently.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes for any endeavor. Yeah. Like you build all these patterns, whether it's mental or physical, and
Yeah.
it takes a while to do them. And yeah, I think also, what's interesting, what I've started to realize, because I'm doing the same work as you are, and yesterday, workout A, which was like Nordics, pancakes, all the craziness, oh my, took me about an hour on the dot. And that would take me usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours, because like that kicks my ass. But like it took me an hour on the dot. So I started to see the shift of my conditioning change. And I think it's mainly because of what you were saying, which is like I had to suck at it for a while, and it had to be a little long for the first week. But then the third, fourth week of me doing it so consistently, now it takes me an hour to finish each workout. And of course, having less weight helps, because like, it helps everything. But I did notice that when I was doing it.
Yeah.
I think the big shift that you're gonna probably have to see and feel in your body is getting your hips, getting your knees, getting your ankles to a point where it can even get into the positions you need to get into. And that's like 90% of the battle. The 10% is easy, because it's like what I do is like I can get in the shapes easy. So it's just like pop, go.
Yeah.
For you is like I have to first get there and then be able to do the 10%, which is the conditioning, the stuff that I can do naturally as an athlete, which is work hard, right? Working hard is easy for an athlete. It's being able to get to working intelligently is hard. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it really does. But I mean, like really, man, where my head is at right now, it's just connections. Like,
yeah, I love it.
I've never felt connections like. And the other day when I was working in the intensive with Nick, I can't even, I don't even, it's probably the first or second day, like I felt a connection from my toe through my ankle, through my knee, up to my hip, and I could get into the standing Caesar. Like I could get a little bit lower, and I could actually. It was the first day, yeah, because I remember taking a video for Nick at home, later that day, and I was like, man, I can do this movement now, and I can.
Yep.
And it
100%.
was all about connections and like realizing that there was a connection that was breaking at some point during the movement, and I just wasn't even realizing. I was just like, oh, my knee hurts. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that is everything. And I think that is often overlooked is because they think, okay, you just do the movement, just do the protocol, like do the lunges and do the quad sets and then do the bridges and you'll be good to go. And
yeah,
and I'm sure you went to that, right? You went to like the protocol, like 3 by 10, blah, blah, blah.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that worked for me at one point in the past, but that's just not where I'm at right now. So,
It works till it doesn't, until
yeah,
you're put in a situation where you have to like bend your knees really weird or like jump and land, then it's like, all right, I can't do it.
yeah,
I think the biggest thing that I'm going to come back to with you, and this is a good context for you. I'm going to draw this for you real quick. So like you have all these joints, right? You have all these joints in your body. There's so many of them. There's even joints that like, between your vertebrae and all that.
yeah,
And every joint has its own capacity to move, but also, more importantly, capacity to handle stress and then capacity to produce force, right? So, like, you take the knee joint, right? The knee joint has a certain capacity to move. Say, for example, you've incurred a bunch of like tight stuff around the knee. Maybe the capacity is, I don't know, maybe it's 20 degrees when it's flexed. It's not very much, right? And then at 20 degrees, if that's all it has, that means its ability to handle stress is probably very little, right? Because they can only bend 20 degrees. So how much stress can it handle? Not much stress it can handle. And of course, the ability for it to produce force is probably very little too. It's like, unless you're Bruce Lee, a 1 inch punch is not going to do much damage, unless you've mastered the entire range of motion, right? So
yeah,
capacity to produce force is little. Now, here's the biggest thing: when your capacity of your joint in general, which comprises all the stuff you talked about, joint is less than the demand. Say that your demand happened to be that lunge back in the day. That was a demand you placed on the body, but the capacity of your joint was way less to even handle that demand.
yeah,
Of course, it's going to be a tweak or an injury or an ouch of some sort,
mm-hmm.
right? So, like, our whole goal with you is simply to look at every single joint in your body and be like, well, where is he at? And how
Yeah,
can we improve his capacity everywhere
yeah,
such that the load, that's the demand that's being placed on his body, isn't taken up by his joints. It's taken up by the active structures, his muscles, his tendons, his all those things, versus the passive structures, which are the bones and the cartilage. They're
yeah.
like last resort. But yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I mean, I always thought about it as like, especially going through this with Nick, just like kind of unlocking parts of my body that have been sort of locked up and not really used in the past.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I mean, he just like with everything else, man, there's just like more context and
Yeah.
actually putting load on muscles as opposed to joints. And I mean, that in itself is mind blowing. And
Because that's what you just said to me, though. You said like the connections are big, right? When you're saying connections, what you're actually doing is unloading the stress onto the muscle structure, the fascia, all
yeah,
that stuff, and you're taking it off the bone. And that's what's cool, that you're connecting to the connection, because that's what it's doing.
and
That's
what's amazing about that feeling, to me at least, is it feels powerful. It really does. I mean, like when everything is like lined up, and I guess maybe that's even that thing I was talking about with Isabel, being in a lunge position and like being connected and just like locked into the floor, like you just feel like people are gonna bounce off of you, or yeah, I mean, it's a good feeling.
What does that do for the rest of your day? Like going about your day, like what does that feeling do for you?
Oh, dude, of course, man, it makes the day better. Yeah, I mean, as opposed to feeling like a tired old man.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I think too, like if this is the most difficult thing you do, like, in here, and like, and you go about your day. I mean, there's of course there's plenty of difficult things in your life. I can't even begin to assume. You're a parent, you're have a family, you have all sorts of things. You have a job, and you play ball, and then you work out, and all this stuff's going on. But if we make it really difficult in that 1.5 hour with you, and then you overcome it, and you created something that's more stable, and you felt a little stronger. I feel the same way. It's like that carries on to every conversation, every relationship, every encounter, how you compose yourself, you walk, everything about how you feel about yourself changes. I think that's powerful, man. That's really cool. I'm
yeah,
glad that you have that feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's good. Yeah.
It's
I mean, dude, even too, just like the level of excitement from. I mean, I remember like when I realized I could squat and like almost sit on my heels. Like I never been able to do that.
that's so
And
awesome.
the other day I was in like HEB and I needed to look at the canned tomatoes on the bottom shelf and like really dig back there and I could get down there and like look at them and I wasn't like having to lay on the freaking the
Bro,
floor
bro,
of HEB. Like I could squat down there and like even kind of bend down even more and look.
oh man. For those of you that are watching, HEB is a grocery store here in Texas and in Austin specifically. And that is my litmus test actually for people. If they can like get down to like grab things off the shelf, I know shit's working.
Yeah, yeah. It was working the other night.
That's awesome. And I mean, the funny thing is too, like we take that shit for granted, right? Like as we get older, and until we can't, right? Until we can't take it for granted. And it's like, oh my God, I gotta get this back. This feels like old man stuff. And then you get it back, and it's like, oh, this is what. And I remember you were in the gym, and I was jumping around, messing around. And you jumped up and you landed. You were like, I landed on my toes.
Yeah, it felt weird. I was like, I didn't know I could do that.
Harness the power of my cat Smokey landing, just like. Yeah, no, I mean that's the power of the connection, right? Like that's literally what top down Visa makes you do is it teaches you how to load into your feet
Yeah,
versus collapsing into your arches and they're doing whatnot.
yeah,
Awesome, bro. Well, cool. I think that it's been pretty cool for me to watch as an outsider. Like I don't train you, but I hear all the stories and I talk to Nick about it, so I start to make assumptions. And then when I get to watch you, it's also cool for me to observe because I can pick on like I can pick up on like a lot of things, 50 different things at once. It's just like my eye has been trained to see it.
yeah.
But it's cool to see your brain starting to go. I'm like, oh,
Oh
he's
man, dude. I mean, you talked about work in the gym. I mean, for me, when I'm with Nick, like the work is, I mean, of course, like my muscles, but dude, yeah, it's like 90% up here just trying to like, oh God, how do I like line this up and what does that feel like? And just like, I mean, there's like a lot of processing going on.
100%. What was that movie that was like, okay, move your toes? What was that called? There was some movie that I can't remember it. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Um, no, I think that is this work. It becomes cerebral at first, and then it becomes embodied too. Like you start to think first, and then it slowly becomes embodied. It becomes embodied when you find the connection. It becomes
Yeah.
cerebral when you try to find it. And yeah, man, I think that's the journey. Um, is where you get it embodied, then it feels awesome. But when it's
Yeah.
cerebral, like, I'm trying to move my damn pinky. I can't move my pinky. Can't,
Yeah.
you know? Why do I got to move this damn big toe? Why, why is this?
Oh man.
But man, it's a pleasure to watch you from where you were. Because I remember looking at your X-rays. I remember like observing everything. Like, man, he's got a lot of stuff going on. But it wasn't like, to me, from an outsider, sometimes clients think, oh man, don't look at me, I'm so fucked up, but here you go. But for me, it was more like, okay, this is pretty normal across the board for a lot of people. It has become the norm, which is sad in some ways, but also this is reality. And I saw it, I was like, okay, we can overcome this. That was my first thought. I was like, we can do this.
Yeah, no, I felt that from both you and Nick. I mean, I know, like, I've had those panic moments where it's just like, it's like the same pains are coming back, and it's just, yeah, Nick is, just very much like, dude, you got this, man. Just keep working.
It's just data,
Yeah.
just gives us information, and then we can pick from there. Well, man, cool. Is there anything else you want to share? I think that I got some really cool gems from this, but if there's anything else you want to share, go for it. If not, I'll close up.
I'm good, dude. I'm just, I'm happy where I'm at. I feel like, I don't want to say it, but man, I feel like dunking is a possibility in my future.
You and me both, we're gonna be lobs, bro. I'm gonna throw lobs at you, you're gonna throw lobs at me. We're gonna start dunking, making a cool video about it. Let's do it.
Let's do it, dude. Yeah, for
right,
sure.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I look forward to more.
Yeah, me too.
Peace.
Yeah.